In the bustling city of Port Harcourt, where oil money flowed like water and ambition ran deep in young men's veins, lived Dr. Ramsay Okoro, a man whose life seemed to follow a perfectly plotted graph. At 32, he had everything a Nigerian mother would pray for her son: a thriving private practice, a mansion in GRA Phase 2, 3 luxury cars, and a reputation that drew patients from as far as Abuja and Lagos. Ramsay's journey to success had been remarkable but expected. As the first son of a middle-class family, he had graduated top of his class from the University of Port Harcourt's College of Medicine in 2015. His residence at the University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital had been equally stellar, earning him the nickname Golden Hands for his surgical precision. "My son," his mother would often say during their Sunday evening calls, "when will you bring home a wife? Your mates are carrying their second child now." Ramsay would always laugh it off. "Mama, leave matter. The right woman will come at the right time." But Ramsay had a type: tall, slim, light-skinned, and highly educated. His Instagram feed was filled with such women, and his casual dates never strayed from this template. His best friend Chidi often teased him about his predictability. Then came that fateful Sunday in February. Ramsay had decided to attend the 9 a.m. service at New Life Assembly instead of his usual 11 a.m. service at another church. He would later wonder if this simple change in routine had been the first thread in the web that would entangle him. The praise session was in full swing when he noticed her, Blessing Okonkwo. She was nothing like his usual type. Short, dark-skinned, and generously built, she swayed to the worship songs with such abandon that her joy seemed to illuminate the space around her. Their eyes met across the congregation, and something shifted in Ramsay's world. After the service, he found himself walking towards her, his feet moving of their own accord. "Hello," he said, his usual smoothness deserting him. "I'm Ramsay." She smiled, and dimples appeared in her round cheeks. "I know who you are, Dr. Okoro. Everyone knows the famous surgeon." Her voice was melodious, with a hint of mischief that made his heart race. They talked for hours at the church cafe, and Ramsay found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. When she mentioned she sold traditional herbs and conducted spiritual cleansing, he barely registered it, a detail that would later come to haunt him. What happened over the next 2 weeks defied all logic. Ramsay, known for his methodical approach to everything, threw caution to the wind. His phones rang constantly with calls from concerned friends and family. "Bros, you want to marry somebody you just meet?" Chidi had exclaimed. "This no be you at all." But Ramsay was beyond reason. The traditional wedding was arranged in record time, and before anyone could make sense of it, Blessing became Mrs. Okoro. The changes began subtly. First, it was small requests. "My love," she would say, her voice honey-sweet, "why don't you help me wash these clothes? A husband should share in household duties." Ramsay, who had never done his own laundry since his university days, found himself eagerly hand-washing her clothes. Then came the cooking. "Darling, I'm tired today. Could you prepare dinner?" Each request came with a strange compulsion he couldn't resist. His friends watched in horror as the once proud doctor began performing domestic tasks with an almost zombie-like enthusiasm. One evening, as Ramsay scrubbed the bathroom tiles, he caught his reflection in the mirror. For a moment, his eyes seemed distant, empty, like looking into a deep well. But before he could grasp that fleeting moment of clarity, Blessing's voice floated up the stairs. "Ramsay, when you're done there, come and help me prepare a goosey soup." "Yes, my love," he responded automatically, the brief spark of awareness already fading. What nobody knew was that in Blessing's private prayer room, on a shelf hidden behind African prints and religious books, sat a small bottle filled with smoky essence. Inside, a tiny figure that looked remarkably like Ramsay floated in perpetual darkness, its spirit bound by ancient magic that few still remembered. Dr. Janet Okafor noticed the changes in her colleague first. As the head of pediatrics at the same hospital where Ramsey consulted, she had known him for years. The man who now shuffled through the corridors with downcast eyes bore little resemblance to the confident surgeon she once knew. One morning, she found him in the doctor's lounge, mindlessly stirring a cup of tea. "Ramsey," she called softly, "is everything okay?" He looked up, and for a brief moment, Janet saw fear flash across his eyes. "Everything is fine," he replied mechanically. "Blessing takes good care of me." "And how many surgeries have you performed this month?" Ramsey's hand trembled, spilling tea onto the counter. "Blessing says I should focus on less demanding cases. She worries about my stress levels." Janet's concern deepened when she noticed the burn marks on his hands, unusual for a surgeon known for his meticulous care of his most precious tools. "These burns," she began. "Oh, from cooking," he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm learning to prepare Blessing's favorite soups. Did you know the oil splashes when you're frying onions?" That evening, Janet visited Mama Ramsey, his mother, in her small shop in Mile 3. The elderly woman was arranging sachets of powdered milk when Janet walked in. "Mama, something is wrong with your son." The old woman's hands stilled. "I know," she whispered. "My son is no longer my son. That woman." She spat on the ground. "3 times I've gone to their house. 3 times that witch has sent me away, speaking through my own son's mouth." As they talked, another visitor arrived. Chidi, Ramsey's childhood friend. His face was grave. "Mama," he said, "I saw something today. I went to their house to check on bros, and I heard Blessing talking in her prayer room. The words she was speaking, they were not prayers to any god I know." Mama Ramsey clutched her wrapper tighter. "Tell me everything." "She didn't see me, but I recorded it on my phone." He played the audio, and a chill filled the small shop as they heard Blessing's voice chanting in an ancient dialect, followed by the sound of liquid being poured and glass clinking. "Ndiogu," Mama Ramsey hissed. "Juju woman. I knew it." She turned to a shelf behind her and pulled out a dusty box. Inside was a string of cowrie shells and a small pouch. "My grandmother was a priestess in our village. Before she died, she gave me these for protection. The time has come to use them." Janet, who had always prided herself on her scientific mindset, found herself asking, "What can we do?" The old woman's eyes gleamed with determination. "First, we must find the bottle. In old magic like this, there is always a bottle. Then," she pulled out a black cord from the pouch, "we fight fire with fire." Meanwhile, in his mansion, Ramsey was preparing dinner, his movements mechanical. Blessing sat in her special chair, watching him with satisfied eyes. "My love," she called sweetly, "don't forget to add uziza to the soup. And when you're done, I need you to massage my feet. All this spiritual work makes them so tired." "Yes, my love," Ramsey responded, while somewhere deep inside the bottle on her shelf, a tiny spark of his true self screamed in silence. The plan took shape in Mama Ramsey's backyard, under the cover of darkness. Janet, Chidi, and the old woman sat around a kerosene lamp, speaking in whispers while crickets chirped in the background. "The new moon is in 3 days," Mama Ramsey explained, arranging cowrie shells in a pattern. "That's when her powers will be weakest. But we must be careful. She will sense any direct attack." "I can create a distraction," Janet offered. "I'll call Ramsey for an emergency surgery. She won't suspect me. I've done it before." Chidi leaned forward, his voice urgent. "But how do we find the bottle? That house is massive, and she never leaves her prayer room unattended." A slow smile spread across Mama Ramsey's weathered face. "Leave that to me. Every market woman knows something." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Ada? Remember that house help you mentioned was looking for work? The one who used to work for that herbalist in Abba? Tell her to come see me tomorrow morning." The next day, a young woman named Chioma sat in Mama Ramsey's shop, nervously twisting her wrapper. "You worked for Mama Seven Sisters?" the old woman asked. Chioma nodded. "Yes, Ma. I know about the bottles. They always keep them in dark places, never where sun will touch them.
and they must add special water every 3 days. Perfect, Mama Ramsey said, pressing some notes into the girl's hand. Here's what you'll do. 2 days later, Blessing opened her door to find a shy-looking girl with proper references from a known agent. I'm looking for house help work, Ma, Chioma said, eyes downcast. I can cook, clean, everything. Blessing studied her suspiciously, but the girl's demeanor seemed appropriately submissive. Come back tomorrow morning. We'll try you for 1 week. That same evening, Janet called Ramsey's phone. Blessing answered, as she always did now. Doctor, there's an emergency at the hospital, a 7-year-old with acute appendicitis. The parents specifically asked for Dr. Okoro. Blessing hesitated. Her control over Ramsey was strongest at night, but refusing would raise suspicions. He'll be there in 30 minutes, she said finally. As soon as Ramsey left, Blessing felt uneasy. Something in the air felt wrong. She went to check her prayer room, where the bottle sat safely on its shelf. But as she turned to leave, she heard a crash from the kitchen. Sorry, Ma. Chioma's voice called out. The pot fell. Water everywhere. Blessing hurried downstairs, irritation clear on her face. The kitchen floor was flooded, water seeping under the cabinets. Useless girl, she snapped. Clean this up now. But as she supervised the cleanup, a shadow moved upstairs. Chidi, who had slipped in through the back entrance Chioma had left unlocked, crept into the prayer room. His hands shook as he filmed the shelves with his phone, documenting everything. Then he saw it. Behind a worn Bible, a small green bottle with smoke swirling inside. Just as he reached for it, a floorboard creaked behind him. I wondered how long it would take them to send someone. Blessing's voice was different now, deeper, ancient. You people think you're clever? Chidi spun around. Blessing stood in the doorway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Behind her, Chioma lay unconscious on the floor. You forget, Blessing continued, moving closer. I have been doing this since your grandmother was a child. Did you really think? She stopped suddenly, looking down at her feet. A line of white powder crossed the doorway, the special chalk Mama Ramsey had given Chidi, telling him to use it only if he was discovered. What have you done? Blessing whispered, trying to move but finding herself frozen. Chidi reached for the bottle again, but Blessing began to chant, her voice rising to a scream. The room plunged into darkness, and somewhere in the distance, a bell began to toll. But Blessing had one crucial mistake. In her arrogance, she'd forgotten the first rule of traditional magic. Never underestimate an old woman's power, especially a mother fighting for her son. As Blessing's chants reached a crescendo, another voice cut through the darkness. Mama Ramsey's voice, strong and clear, coming from a small radio Chidi had hidden in his pocket. The old woman's counter-incantations, recorded earlier and played at precisely this moment, filled the room. Impossible, Blessing screamed, her concentration breaking. That moment of disruption was all Chidi needed. He lunged for the bottle, his fingers closing around its smooth surface. At the hospital, Ramsey, who had been mechanically preparing for surgery, suddenly gasped as if surfacing from deep water. Hold him, Janet shouted to the nurses as Ramsey swayed on his feet. She had known no real emergency existed. This had all been part of the plan. Back at the house, Blessing tried to move, but the white chalk line had become a circle of light, trapping her. Chioma, who hadn't really been unconscious, sprang up and sprinkled holy water in a cross pattern, another of Mama Ramsey's preparations. No. Blessing's perfectly maintained appearance began to crack. Her skin seemed to age decades in seconds, her true essence revealing itself. Mama Ramsey herself burst into the room, cowrie shells rattling in her hands. Return what you have stolen, she commanded. Chidi, following the instructions he'd been given, opened the bottle. A cloud of smoke escaped, rushing out the window, seeking its rightful owner. At the hospital, Ramsey's eyes cleared, memories flooding back. Where am I? What has she done to me? He asked Janet, his voice shaking. Blessing's power crumbled as the bottle's magic dispersed. Her expensive wig fell off, revealing gray hair and a face now wrinkled with age. You don't understand, she wheezed. I only wanted what everyone wants. A successful husband, a good life. By stealing another person's soul, Mama Ramsey spat. By destroying my son's life, leave this house before I show you what real village magic can do. Blessing looked around wildly, but seeing no escape and no sympathy, She grabbed her handbag and fled, her designer heels clattering on the stairs. As she ran past the kitchen, all the pots and pans she'd made Ramsay clean flew off their hooks, chasing her out the door. Later that evening, Ramsay sat in his mother's living room, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm night. The ordeal had left him weak, but his eyes were clear again. "I can't believe I lost months of my life," he whispered. "The things she made me do." "Shh," his mother soothed, pressing a cup of hot herbs into his hands. "It's over now. Drink this. It will help clear the last of her poison from your system." Janet, who had come straight from the hospital, sat nearby. "The medical board will understand. We've documented everything. You'll be back in surgery within weeks." Chidi, still holding the now empty bottle, shook his head. "Bros, next time you want to marry, do proper background check-o. No more love at first sight." They all laughed, the sound chasing away the last dark shadows of Blessing's influence. Outside, the neighborhood dogs barked, announcing the return of normalcy to the formerly bewitched doctor's mansion. As for Blessing, some say she was last seen boarding a bus to Benin Republic, her true age showing in every step. Others whisper that she still practices her dark arts in remote villages, but never again did she dare to trap a man's spirit in a bottle. The price of failure, she had learned, was too high when faced with the power of a mother's love and true friendship. Ramsay eventually returned to his practice, more successful than ever. But now he wore a small pouch of protective cowrie shells under his surgical scrubs, a gift from his mother. Some things, he had learned, were better not left to chance.